Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to have a look at materials and construction methods for your A-level product design coursework. So the first two pages you did were your contact and your client profile, which essentially give your folder direction of what you're going to do, whether it's engineering, architecture, furniture and so on. Everything from this point on essentially becomes a bit more tailored specifically to what you're doing and less generic for everyone. So what you want to look at is materials and construction methods specific to the area you are looking in. So we'll start with materials first. So what you need to be looking at, again, like with the theory content for the exams, you've got to avoid sweeping statements like wood, metal, plastic. Okay, you need to be looking to specific hardwood, softwoods, what kind of woods, where's it going outside, inside, that sort of thing. And to do that, you need to talk about the properties of the materials, the typical uses of it, the pros and cons of each material, the cost of each material, and then the environmental issues that go along with that as well. If you don't talk about the environmental issues, it says over here, you can't get past a D grade because you have to consider the wider issues to do with the materials that you're using. Things like costs. Materials databases that we use don't have costing on there, but what you can do, typical places to look are things like Amazon, Covers, B&Q, those sorts of places. Okay. Then what you want to look at after that, so once you've got materials, you start to look at the construction methods available to you. So obviously you're manufacturing it in college, so you can only use the manufacturing methods we've got in college. So what machines have we got, what equipment we got, that sort of thing. Okay, not only construction methods in terms of like tools, it's also things like joining methods, so woods, like pins, screws, bolts, that sort of thing, and any finishes, so paints and varnishes and so on. Okay. For everything, it's always pros of it, cons of it, most common uses for it, the costs of it as well, because you've got to factor in, because if you're A-level project, you source everything, so you've got to make sure you've got a good idea of how much things cost. So just to give you a couple of examples, how you lay it out is up to you. Most people like to do it as a table because it kind of really reads quite nicely. So this one's on finishes, so it's got all the finishes downside there, a couple of pictures or examples to sort of show what it looks like, advantages, disadvantages, what it's most commonly used for, and then like overall evaluation of whether he's going to use it in his project or not. So we've got construction methods. So again, these are photographs obviously from our workshop. So don't just do ones you know for sure you're definitely going to use. You want to have an overall idea of like generally what we've got available, because you want, obviously you can't say you're going to make something using a method we don't have available to you, because actually that's no use for anyone. So with this, obviously, take your pictures, an overall summary of what the machine can do, and also the limitations of what the machine can do as well. Advantages, disadvantages, and then overall how likely you think you are to end up needing to use this in your particular project. Same sort of thing for joining methods, so looking at bolts, pins, screws, nails, staples, that sort of thing. Just FYI, nails and glue gun are never a legitimate way of using, like explaining how to stick things together, because they're not actually very, very strong at all. Again, advantages, disadvantages, materials that it can be used for, overall summary, and so on. Then when you're doing the actual material side of things, some people like to sort of like group them together in terms of like fabrics, metals, plastics as like sub-pages. That again is completely up to you how you choose to do it. But it's better to get an idea of like more materials than you think you might need. You will need, as you notice up at the top, these have all been referenced. So you will need to make sure you keep hold of all websites and databases you go on to make sure you can reference these clearly later as well. So just to show you a few different ones, so basically he's got fabrics, he's got plastics there, metals, and timber-based materials there as well. So it's the materials, finishes, joining methods, and the actual construction methods that go with it. If you're doing architecture, you will need to do a bit on the actual real life build, but also specifically, more importantly rather, the architectural model. So what sort of materials and construction methods used more commonly for the architectural model making skills that you see. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you've got any questions, please let me know.